Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual, and I'm joined by my co-founder and co-host, Paddy Mann. Morning, Paddy.
Good morning.
Morning. So today we're going to take a look at one of our internal processes, that's of a business, not of our bodies, but arguably the most important one, our sales process, because as AirManual is a young company, it's something that we've had to get working really early on. And with a great product and a great problem space, we've been able to do that. But it didn't mean that it was something that would actually scale and continuously take us to the next level when we first created our sales process. So we've been iterating on it again and again, and this has helped us to create a much more effective process, one that both converts more, but also takes much less of our time. So we're going to look back at what changes we made and how we've rolled them out in a way that's allowing us to scale without having to work crazy hours or having to spend our time dealing with chaos and firefighting. Now, the lessons that we'll share have worked really well in sales, but can equally apply to any area of your business. So if you're a business leader looking to improve any part of your business, then listen on. So, Paddy, what's the history here? Why did we focus on improving our sales process? Where did it start? How have we gone about this?
Cool. Yeah, in my notes I've written down that, originally Alexis was doing all the demos. That's not quite true. If we go back to the start, we were both doing demos. It's one of the early things you need to do in a company. You need to essentially go out and get feedback and test what's working and find out how to create an approach where you can have a meeting with a lead who's got the right problem and show them the value of what you've got and convert them to a customer. So early days, clearly we're going to be out there with founders testing it again and again and again, and all sorts of embarrassing stories about some of the early things that we attempted to do didn't work. We won't go there. But ultimately we came out with a process for being able to run a demo. And if we were talking to the people in the right audience, we would be able to connect with the problems that they were experiencing. We've got a brilliant one at AirManual, so that wasn't something that we got quite quickly. And we got to the point where we got something where we could get consistent results with initially with both of us, and it allowed me to free up my time and focus on other areas of the business, and then Alexis getting good results again and again and again with a relatively low input of time, which is fantastic. That's a real milestone for your business. But clearly we can't have Alexis spending all his time doing demos forever more. There's a limit to how far we can scale, and in the spirit of the show, De-Stressing Your Business, we don't want the answer to be that he works every weekend, evening, night, holidaying, and so on. That's not our approach. So naturally, we had to start trying to scale it up. And so we brought in some consultants who were both going to support with the sales and the customer success, putting people after the sales process. And what we did initially, and this is what we always do, it's our general approach, is we look at what are the tasks that Alexis is doing, that he's doing in a consistent way, that are taking up a big chunk of his time, and we can delegate to someone else, so to new consultants that we've hired, to free up Alexis to take on the next challenges. Mm-hmm. And at that time, it was a big part of that was the demos and then supporting customers afterwards. So we documented the high-level approach, we tested it, we created an onboarding process for those new joiners and training, so that they would not just read the process of how to do a demo, but would test it multiple times with Alexis and with each other. And quite quickly, we get them to the point where they were doing a fantastic demo and getting consistent results. In fact, I think this is something we're really proud of, is within 1 week, because of the way that we document our processes, and we're used to doing it from our old businesses, because of the way we systemize that in AirManual, because of the way we set up the onboarding, we got them to the point where they could actually do those demo calls, and got them trained to do that with almost none of Alexis's time, because we made a self-service checklist and they were supporting each other. And they were able to get really consistent results with this script that was working. So for a while, we were in a great place. Alexis moves on to other challenges, continues to support them, but not needing a lot of time. But again, at some point, we work through some of the other challenges in the business and come back around and go, you know what? it's a sales process. That's what's holding us back again from the next level. And so since that point, I guess we're looking kind of 12 months ago, probably the last 12 months, we've been making a ton of improvements. And so it's not that we've created the sales process and got two people in and then that's done. We now ignore it and move on forevermore. We deal with bigger problems, and at some point, sales becomes the area to focus on again. And we've iterated, I think it's been at least 8 times, 10 times. I mean, you got the big iterations, the big revamps, and all the small ones. Some of the challenges we faced, we saw that our conversion rates were dropping significantly. And one of the big reasons was that was actually the type of people that were starting to come into the funnel, which wasn't something that we had previously experimented with when Alexis was running it, but was now a challenge for the consultants. We experimented with different offerings of how we supported our customers with consulting. And at one point we had one package, and then we had multiple packages, and then we changed it back down to a single package, making it simpler both with consultants and for customers. We then took that single consulting package and fully systemized that end to end, so that as well as being able to do a demo consistently, our consultants were able to take our customers through 8 workshops and get consistent results. And this was another area where suddenly Alexis would have previously needed to do a lot of oversight and a lot of support, can completely remove himself from that area of the business. So we expanded greatly what they could do and the value they could deliver, and then iterated on that and got it working even better. We've created, one of the bigger things we did at the end of last year was create a brochure and other assets to support the sales process. So rather than just relying on the demo, we realized that there was a lot of different questions and so on, and we wanted our team to have a consistent way of explaining it and to be able to do it really concisely and quickly. We wanted our customers to be able to do self-research and answer some of their own questions. We wanted our team to have quick ways of answering any of the kind of different edge cases, the different places that our leads would be taking, and different questions, whether it be about pricing or competitors or anything else. And so we created this asset. And so many other things. It's continued to tweak, lots of small tweaks, lots of big ones, better assets, clearer processes, and so on.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a really great summary. I think some of the bits that I really pick out of that, so one being the importance of that kind of product market fit stage at the beginning, working out, can we sell it at all before you start to hire salespeople and document it, and getting clear on, okay, I've been able to make some sales. What is it? What were the questions that I asked? How did I describe what we offer? How did I match that to their needs? And in fact, we have a template in our example workspace that's available, which we'll have to provide a link to, on like that standard structure for a discovery call, right? Which kind of works in a variety of sales situations. And so that was a great starting point. I think that other point you made around how quickly I was able to get other team members up and running, and particularly at a time that I was busy. I remember the week that I had 2 sales consultants joining us on the same day, and my diary was stacked with sales calls. All of my time was essentially with customers. That's why we felt able to bring people in. And so it's crucial that it only took an hour and a half of my time across the 2 sales consultants to support them and provide coaching alongside them following the onboarding checklist. And, again, that's a template that we've taken and made available, and we'll put in show notes. But then the other thing, I think, as you say, like later on, we then continually freed up my time by taking other activities that are later on in the sales process and the customer success process and consulting, and continuously like got them handed over to free up my time as we knew what worked. And then, as you say, like the big major change was then starting to add assets as well. So the other thing that I wanted to highlight was the use of that resource, the brochure, which was a really kind of major change for us. We had printed versions at the event that we were at recently, and that made a fundamental difference, right, in terms of how we were able to then answer questions and structure our sales conversation. And that required major changes to the sales discussion and the process, because suddenly it's like, where do you introduce this and how do you use it as part of a sales conversation, all these sorts of things. And so that required some major changes. So I think those are some really good milestones that you've kind of taken us along. But what about like even more recently in the last last couple of months, last few weeks, what are some of the other things that we've been doing that have also been making changes?
Yeah, the interesting thing is it's this continuous cycle. So rather than it being okay, we sort out our sales process and then we move on, we've constantly been identifying new ways and new blockers to overcome and solve. And so we really discovered that getting a consistent message and answering all the questions and so on in the demo call was causing us a lot of pain, and we essentially needed quite a long script to try and answer it all as part of a process. And so that's why we created the brochure last year. And then we solved that problem, and now we've got different areas for improvement. So right now, we have unblocked a lot of the things for growth, and we are ramping up. And so we're looking at how do we take to the next stage. And one of the areas that we see is that we can introduce much more specialized sales roles. So whereas initially we've just got a founder who's doing everything, wearing about 5 different hats within the sales teams and customer success, we then bring in consultants who are able to support a big parts of the time-consuming ones, both in doing demos for inbound sales and for doing the customer success process. We now want to hire in more people, but rather than taking, initially what we didn't try and do is hire in additional founders because that would have been very expensive. What we're not going to try and do now is continue to bring in generalists who are both able to do consulting and sales. Because if we can instead do specialists, we can get people who are more suited to the specific tasks at the start of the funnel. So when we're doing sales, and we can look even get more involved with earlier sales calls, doing more chasing up, working with a marketing team, and doing kind of more outbound activity, and split that from our customer success and our consulting team, who are then more focused on taking someone who is already interested and keen to be working with us and supporting on that journey. And that's another big milestone for the business by splitting those out into specialist roles. It's going to allow us to scale faster. It's going to allow us to get better results because as it is, we've got team members who do an amazing job of splitting the two roles, but it's a challenge. You have moments where you get too busy with existing customers and the earlier part of the funnel gets not enough attention, and vice versa. So we're currently tackling those challenges. We're also making updates to the consulting process. We recently took our 8 workshop process and went, actually, you know what? The first 2 workshops feel like they're in the wrong order. And it's causing a bit of pain. It's leading to us needing more calls with more people, which aren't necessarily being as helpful as they could do. And so we made a pretty substantial change in reversing those, which required updates to training, updates to the processes. You couldn't just replace them because one of the workshops assumed that you had knowledge of the previous one, so it needed a bit of a rewrite and revamp. And so those are just 2 examples that we've been working through in the last few weeks. And once we resolve those, I think we're expecting that we'll be focused on some of the other areas of our business for a while, but they will absolutely give us another 3 months, 6 months. There'll be new challenges as we've introduced those new roles and found new blockers and areas for focus.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the picture that you paint is that firstly, there are some times that we've made some really major changes. Sometimes we've made small changes, but there's a lot that's gone on. What's the impact of that? Because otherwise, are we just busy fools? Are we just tinkering with something that was working at the beginning? What's been in terms of the numbers, the metrics, the feeling? What's been the outcome of all of that work?
Cool. So, if we go back to early on when things were working well, as me and Alexis, I think we started getting up to around converting about 30% of the people we were talking to, and generally we were converting them onto our platform. And we've introduced some new consulting packages, and that became a key part of what we were doing. And we started to get a certain percentage onto consulting, only about 25%, because there's a ton of value that we can deliver, particularly for any business leader who's well, busy and will struggle to find their time to open up this whole new area of expertise. We provide a lot of support and help them get results, get momentum in their team, and so on. So we introduced the consulting, and that helped. What we saw last summer was that our conversion rates went down significantly, both for selling consulting and for actually selling the platform. So where we assumed and had our business models based on being able to get 30%, and we'd seen that we could do that both when we were doing it ourselves, and we saw that we would still get those results when we brought in Jessica and KI consultants. It suddenly went down to 10%, and you initially go, is that just a glitch? Because numbers go up and down, but after more like 4, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, you start going, no, okay, there's something really here, and we identified a number of reasons for that, and it was we were doing wider marketing efforts. They weren't bringing in the same quality of leads. The consultants were getting busy and struggling to deal with some of the different leads that we were bringing in that had perhaps less contact with us before in the journey, all sorts of reasons. So we got down to 10%, and we also got to a point where the team were pretty busy supporting those. The impact that we're seeing since last summer is we've gone from 10% conversion rate to 40% conversion rate. So we're now converting more than we ever did, even when it was us as the founders. So that's a 4 times impact, and that goes from our business isn't going to be able to scale at all to this is looking good. But not only that, it's actually reduced the time that we need to support a lead and take them to the point where they're making a decision and are happy to move forward by half. So previously it would typically take over a couple of hours. We're now typically doing it in under an hour to get that initial point and moving forward. So 4 times the results from where we were at a bad point, and half the time. So huge impact.
And I think the in terms of that impact, I think when you talk about half the time, I think there's the time that it takes for our team to have those conversations, convey the benefit, explore it. I think the other thing we've seen is actually the sales cycle has shortened as well. I think that one of the things that we perhaps weren't making it easy for people to buy is probably the simplest way of putting it, is it wasn't clear on what's the right option for them early on. It wasn't clear what perhaps the next steps would be. There was a bit too much, well, it depends, and so on. And so the changes that we made to that process mean that, as well as it taking less literal effort time, actually elapsed time reduced quite a lot, which is actually in the customer's interest as much for ours. And so I think, you could argue that with a 4 times increase in conversion, 2 times reduction in the effort and the lag and the sales cycle, you've arguably we've improved the sales process 8 times, arguably even 16 times as a result of doing that. However, we're not perfect geniuses at doing this. It wasn't that every single change that we made resulted in the positive impact, right? So were there any, what were some of the changes that perhaps caused pain or didn't go quite as smoothly?
Yeah, I mean, it's a key part of being an entrepreneur. You have to treat your failures as essentially successes. You've tested something, and then you need to move on and work out what will work. So yeah, we made a ton of mistakes, didn't we? So some which just felt like mistakes, some which I think needed to be part of that journey, part of that learning journey. An example would be introducing multiple consulting projects. It took us to the point of testing different areas and understanding as a team what did work, what value the customer needed, and where they were willing to spend money, and what then caused us pain, which allowed us to iterate. Doing multiple packages, I think that caused a fair bit of confusion for some of our customers, some of our leads. So we were able to support less of them because we didn't make the sale. And it caused a lot more complexity internally because systemizing multiple packages takes a significant larger amount of time. And when you get into a situation where someone's perhaps doing one at a time or perhaps doing multiple at the same time, it became a lot more complex than it needed to be. So simplifying it was a huge benefit for us internally and for our customers, by making it much clearer and simpler about what they needed. So that was initially a pain point, but turned around into a big win. We've also had a lot of pain points around. We're seeing results dipping from time to time, and we've taken the action. So I'll say it's not pleasant as an entrepreneur seeing the numbers turn upside down when you think you've been doing a lot of work to make improvements. But the key is that we identified those issues and took action. And we had the freedom as the leaders to take the action because we weren't spending all our time actually on the calls. I'll say that some of these are big changes. So introducing the brochure, even just moving those 2 meetings under the workshop, they require a significant investment of our time.
True.
And when you've got other things that you thought were your priority, having to come up and go, you know what? I thought I was going to be working on this for the next couple of months, but this is a bigger issue for my business right now, and having to make that shift. Yeah, absolutely. It feels painful at that moment in time. But that is the nature of the beast. And I'll say again, the great thing is that we are always ourselves working on improving the business. So it's not that me or you are critical to be on every demo. We have the space to choose which of the projects we're doing to make improvements. And essentially, yes, we had to park something else which we wanted to do to come back and make an improvement to the sales process. But that's okay because we can reason with ourselves. We can see that we're growing as a company. We see that we're growing as individuals. We don't feel like we are stuck.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's such an important point around, if you're stuck in the day-to-day and you can't even create the mental space or space in your calendar to be able to work on these things, then that's an incredibly stressful place to be and makes the whole act of trying to change your ways of working practically impossible. So that's kind of hints at a key point as to how we were able to make the approach work and how we were able to avoid it being stressful. Are there any other things that we did that made the approach work well, particularly, and avoid the stress and particularly lessons that others can take to replicate those kind of results?
Yeah, so I guess some key takeaways for other business leaders, and this could be in sales, but frankly any other business. I think, firstly, when we started and created our initial process, I want to emphasize we did it ourselves. We didn't try to bring in other consultants or salespeople to scale up something that we had no idea whether it would work. It just doesn't work. So really key that when it's unproven, that there's a high involvement from the leadership to essentially run a project to get it to the point where it does work and it can then be delegated and scaled in a consistent way. When you do see it get to the point where you're scaling, frankly, when you get to the point where you go, this is working, I know what I'm doing, I'm not creating value by learning anymore, I'm just turning the wheel, then you need to free up your time. You need to find a way of delegating that down so you can work on the next challenge. And that's where we bring a new resource or take existing team members and retrain them on this area so we can delegate that and free ourselves up to the next challenge. I'll say one of the things we did was we identified a load of issues which led to a load of tweaks, and part of that is that we have a cadence of meetings where we're every day, every week, we're having team meetings, and everyone on the team can raise issues that we discuss in those meetings. And so the way that we made those improvements isn't just being focused on process, it's been having a culture and a setup in the way that you do meetings and handle issues that allows the problems to surface to the top quickly so that you can then prioritize them and take action. So yeah, there's a lot there about delegating, freeing up time. I've made the point several times about us having the freedom to work constantly on improving the business rather than having to do it in it. That's really key. I think we found that as well as having the checklists, so checklists are, oh my God, so valuable. And having the checklists that we've got in AirManual first allowed us to create that demo process and then the process for how to do those 8 different workshops and define them as checklists and know that we can delegate that entire area and spend 0 time, and even creating the onboarding and training so we don't spend time training people to do it, which is incredible. But then when we needed to make major changes, like reversing those workshops, if we made a simple tweak, we just go in and tweak a checklist. If we needed to do a bigger change, then essentially we copy part of the process. We take a couple of those checklists and we work on them in as new documents, new pages, new checklists for our team, but that aren't ready yet. We get them to the point where we feel they're right, and we test them as leaders and make sure we're happy that they will work. And we do the same thing. We update the training, the onboarding, and by doing that, we were able to get our existing team to move from the earlier process to the new one in literally 24 hours and feel comfortable doing it, including doing role plays with each other and getting that tested. So that's been fundamental, having that way of systemizing it. And the final thing I'll throw in is that going beyond the checklists, having other ways of systemizing things in your businesses, like using a brochure for your sales team, is a huge asset. Having those other assets that you can point to and that allow customers to do self-service and so on, and that can actually simplify the checklists that you need to write for your own team. So creating a set of systems and checklists, but also other assets is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I love that. No, I think, and I think that works as a great summary. I think the impact that this has had for us, and we've only covered sales. There are huge other parts of the business that we've been able to do this, both at AirManual, but also other businesses that we've owned, where it's absolutely huge when you kind of make those changes. And in the case of sales at AirManual, it's kind of resulted in 8x kind of improvements as a result of these continuous changes. And I really like that point around changing the team over from one set of processes to another, because that can be really scary for people, right? Is they worry, how do we get everyone consistent? How do I move people over from their previous ways of working? And it's something I remember from our previous careers as management consultants, where you'd have to move whole teams, whole organizations in terms of their ways of working. And we've found this a really powerful way to do that. So we'll make sure that we share in the show notes links to things like our brochure so that people can check that out, so that they can get ideas for their own as well. Check those out in the show notes. But otherwise, thanks very much, Paddy. I think that's given a lot of value there. For regular listeners, you'll know that we run a weekly webinar. If you haven't attended one of these, by the way, you need to make sure that you register. And if this is the first episode that you've listened to, then good news. Now's never been a better time. So that webinar is on how to free up 15 hours per week and remove the constant stress of running a business without slowing down your growth. Typically, there are Wednesdays, 1 p.m. UK time, but you can find out more and register for the next one at airmanual.co/webinar. And a final note for you listening, we need your help. Please share this episode with other people that you think would find it useful, that are needing to improve their sales processes. Taking a minute to share it on social media and provide a review on your favorite podcast platform makes a huge difference to us. It allows us to get more visibility and help more people, but also it allows you to help more people as well, and add more value into other people's lives. So please do that. We hugely appreciate it. We know that we've been getting a lot recently, and our number of downloads has been skyrocketing, particularly over the last month or so. So thank you so much for doing that if you've done that already. But if you haven't, come on, please give us a hand. We really, really appreciate it. Otherwise, until next time, have fun.